It's 11 o'clock in New York City and up and down the East Coast, and on the left-hand side of your screen, a podium set up for the Federal Emergency Management Agency, about to give an update on Irene. We'll listen in as that begins. It was scheduled again to start about 49 seconds ago, but as they get started, we'll take you there. To New York City and Midtown Manhattan, 6th Avenue, Avenue of the Americas, and 51st Street. New York's bravest still out and about, working on a fire in a basement of the 1290 Avenue of the Americas building. According to the Fire Department of New York, it's an all-hands fire. 30 trucks, 120 firefighters still working this thing. No injuries now. 6th Avenue is shut down at 51st Street, uptown bound towards Central Park in Midtown Manhattan. But not that that really matters, because there are hardly any folks on the street anyway. And we're watching Manhattan Beach, Brooklyn, as correspondents are out for Fox 5 News. Dick Brennan is out, and we're able to see the number of trees down all over the borough of Brooklyn. We're getting reports from the eastern end of Long Island, east central end of Long Island, and all over the boroughs of Brooklyn and Queens of lots of trees down. And the wind is still blowing up in Newport, Rhode Island. That's where our New England-based correspondent Molly Line is standing by, clad in blue and still blowing this afternoon. Hey, Moll, or morning.
Yeah, indeed it is. Yeah, still morning. We've got a long way to go. The wind's still kicking up. There are a lot of people coming out to look at the sights here. We're just Newport Harbor here, where along the storm walls the water's kicking up. A lot of kids and dads out here checking things out. That's concern that the authorities have because of the number of downed power lines all across the state. There are about 480,000 people that go through the national grid here, and about 160 of them without power. Shep, back to you.
Molly, thanks. We're interrupting because of a Federal Emergency Management Agency briefing that's going on. We feel like there will be some important information here. Janet Napolitano, the Homeland Security Secretary, speaking now. Let's listen.
In its path, we encourage individuals to listen to their state and local authorities as we move through the response to Irene. We just concluded briefing President Obama on our ongoing efforts to support the states that are being affected by the storm, and he has instructed us to continue leading forward on our response. On the call with the President were other members of his cabinet, including the Secretary of Transportation, Ray LaHood, Secretary of Energy, Steve Chu, and Secretary of the Treasury, Tim Geithner, as well as other White House officials. Our number one message for individuals and families up and down the eastern seaboard this morning is that we're not out of the woods yet. Irene remains a large and potentially dangerous storm. Hazards still persist in communities that have already seen the storm pass. Right now, Hurricane Irene is leaving the New York, New Jersey area. It's going to continue to move up the coast into New England throughout the day. If you are in any of those communities, please stay inside and away from the shoreline. Our local, state, and federal partners in North Carolina, Virginia, and other mid-Atlantic states remain focused on search and rescue, debris removal from critical roadways, and other critical missions this morning. Power outages remain an issue all up and down the coast. We are working with our private sector partners in the electricity sector to make sure that they are getting the power up and running as soon as it can be. No matter where you are this morning, from North Carolina to Maine, we encourage you to stay off the roads as much as possible so that we can keep them clear for first responders and for vehicles who are working on power restoration. We also encourage everyone to continue listening to the instructions of their state and local officials and to visit ready.gov for tips on how to stay safe after the storm. Downed power lines, flooding, generator issues, and fallen trees are just some of the dangers that exist after a storm, and by taking a few simple steps, you can improve your level of safety and the level of safety for your family. We still have a ways to go with Irene. But I did want to take a minute and thank everyone who followed the instructions of their local officials yesterday and last night. As I said, unfortunately, we have seen some loss of life. But by and large, with the evacuations and other precautions taken, we have dramatically decreased the risk to life over the course of the storm. And we want to thank the public for helping us achieve that goal. Now, as I've been saying all week, this storm is in 3 phases: preparation, response, and recovery. We are now into the 2nd phase for the most part. That is the initial part of the response. Damage assessments are already underway. I spoke to Governor Perdue of North Carolina this morning. As the storm clears the East Coast, we will be conducting damage assessments with our state partners in all of the affected states to determine the area of the storm's impacts and the next steps that need to be done in the response and recovery process. So we have a ways to go, but I think it is safe to say that the worst of the storm, at least up to and including New York and New Jersey, has passed. The storm will proceed up through New England this evening and out of the United States by late tonight, early tomorrow morning. With that, I'd like to turn this platform over to Bill Reed from the National Hurricane Center to give the estimate of the storm. Bill?
Thank you, Madam Secretary. You actually did a great job of capturing what the forecast for the storm will be. I want to add a few things here. We were very fortunate to be able to get a unique opportunity. We actually had the Hurricane Hunter aircraft from the Air Force Reserves actually fix the center of the storm as it was coming into New York City earlier this morning. Now that it's come past, the center's here on the Connecticut-New York state line, but we still have the onshore flow with the high surf, tropical storm force winds, and still some threat for tidal flooding, especially when the winds become more out of the west and then southwest this afternoon. The west-facing Buzzards Bay and areas along Rhode Island's coast will be the next issue for the coastal effects. And as you said, everywhere south of there, conditions will be improving, though we still have tropical storm force wind gusts, and we'll have tropical storm warning continue down to Chincoteague to the south of the center of the storm. It'll pass through New England today and into the eastern Canada and the Maritime provinces overnight tonight, and then it'll be the impact and the follow-up after that. Next slide, please. Heavy rain is going to be the ongoing issue. The heaviest rain has exited the New Jersey and Pennsylvania area, but still continues for eastern New York State up into the Adirondacks and all of northern New England, and it should be exiting most of Connecticut and except for extreme western Massachusetts this afternoon. Next slide, please. This is the forecast for the rainfall, continuing rainfall from now on. We're still looking at some 2 to 6 inches of rain across this area. Very highly prone to flash flooding, mountainous and hilly terrain, already saturated grounds. And with that in mind, next slide, please. Next slide, please. These are the impacts that we're looking at. We're already getting some record reports in the river systems in the Philadelphia area of responsibility, widespread moderate to major flooding in southeast New York, western Connecticut, and our anticipation is with the rainfall going up into the river systems of New Hampshire and Vermont that we could see record flooding, flood stages on those rivers. The details for that is best had through our local forecast offices, and by going to weather.gov and clicking on that area, you'll find out the details for each one of the river systems up there. That's what I have for now.
Thanks, Bill. Craig?
Well, as the Secretary says, we're really moving into response. A lot of this is being done by state and local officials. We're there supporting. We've been with these governors' teams well before the storm hit, and so as they begin their response operations, we're also starting to look at damage assessments already in North Carolina. Teams are going out and doing the preliminary assessments, and we'll be working with the governors to determine what additional assistance may be needed on top of the emergency declarations that President Obama has already issued for many of the states along the path of this storm. But our focus really is now in the next 72 hours. As Bill says, we may not yet have all of the impacts from this storm as rivers continue to come up and we look at additional flooding. but we do have substantial power outages. We know we've had flooding, coastal impacts, and as the Secretary pointed out, unfortunately, loss of life. But conditions are improving behind the storm, so we are able to get in quickly and begin those assessments, and we'll continue to work with the governors to determine what impacts and what assistance may be required.
Great.
What sort of preliminary damage assessments are you guys seeing, particularly in North Carolina, where you just went?
North Carolina, it's been pretty much the flooding, a lot of trees down. In the coastal areas they're still getting back out to is several of their highways have had damages from this, flooding, but also a lot of trees down.
In terms of cost?
No dollar figures, not at this point.
When will you have those?
Generally, it takes us several days to begin preliminary damage assessments, and you need to understand that when you're looking at total cost, we are not counting insured losses. What we're looking at would be damages that would be the responsibility of government that is uninsured. So when you start hearing numbers about storm damages and you hear numbers from us, we're really looking at what is the cost to the government and also what is the uninsured losses to individuals. That will not tell you what the insurance losses were. That's a separate additional number that has to be put into that. And then, as the Secretary was getting reports from Governor Perdue, agricultural impacts won't be in our totals. That would be in USDA, and we do know there's been substantial agricultural impacts in Carolina as well.
What is the latest number that you have on loss of life?
Right now, that number, we do not have official numbers. What we see is what you're seeing and what we have reports from the states. I believe the Secretary got briefed from Governor Perdue that they had one additional fatality.
Which would bring them, according to Governor Perdue, up to 6 in North Carolina.
So we do know that there have been fatalities, and states are working to get from their local offices what the official number will be. But unfortunately, New Jersey had somebody that was swept away earlier today, and that may also now become a fatality.
How concerned are you that people are going to return to their homes to inspect damage and cause further problems?
Well, that's things people want to do. We just ask them to heed the local officials when they can come in. We know that Ocean City, Maryland, has already announced that people can start coming back and that they'll be opening back up this afternoon. So I think in some areas people will be able to get back faster than others, but heed local officials, particularly with power outages, trees down. They want to make sure things are safe before people return.
Are you aware of any communities you have not been able to reach because of storm damage?
In North Carolina, they're working to get teams out. They've been doing a lot of swiftwater rescue and getting ferry service back up, but they also have a very robust plan to get in the area. So we don't have reports yet of not being able to get in the areas. It doesn't mean that's not the case, but people have resources to go in and do that kind of work right now.
You can have a lot of people go out today into the sunny afternoon and say, why the heck did we have to evacuate? I'm just curious what you guys would say to that. Additionally, you know, you guys have announced that you're diverting some money from previous disasters, most notably those southern...
Well, there you go. I think the simple answer to why you had to evacuate is they have to plan for a worst case scenario, because all of a sudden, if Stacy Walsh's home in Broad Channel, New York was not 2 feet above it, but 2 feet below it, they'd wonder why they didn't have to evacuate. So they erred on the side of caution. We'll get the latest on the damage estimates and have continuing coverage of the storm as it heads up New England and into Canada. I'm Shepard Smith. We'll be right back.